Hey, everybody. Good day to you. Yes, we're all live and on camera and everything seems fine. Okay, good. Looking good. Sounding good. First, let me say hi. Second, let me say it is really, really, really cold here in Denver today. We've got this whole Arctic blast thing happening through the center of the United States right now, and holy cow. I'm going, okay, we'll get to anyway, one thing at a time. Sorry, I'm not going to let myself get distracted by the comments. Let's go over and check out the comment screen here, everybody. It's cold. And like Minnesota cold, it's like, wow, yeah, it's pretty cold out there. I guess for the next couple of days, it's going to be pretty bad. I am feeling travel weary. I went and visited my family in California this week, and I'm tired. I'm coming on and I'm doing live and I'm doing the show, but it's probably not going to be as long as it usually is. I have some papers, I have some things to go over, but I just want to tell you guys straight up, I got a little bit of a headache and I'm travel weary. Travel really, really takes it out of me. I don't know why. I sleep, I eat, I try to take care of myself and all that, but between the jet lag, even an hour difference, I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be that big of a deal, right? I'm just flying out to California, visiting family for a few days, coming back. What's the big deal? But of course, I take the earliest flight so I can save the money. And so that means I'm getting up at 4:30 in the morning to go out to the airport. And then I get on the plane, and then I'm dead for the rest of the day. I literally have no idea why I would do that to myself. I mean, it's one of those things where you do it, and then you're like, I'm never doing this to myself again. Because for, a day and a half, I was just absolutely zombified out there, right? And I was not exactly the best version of myself. Nothing horrible happened. It was just, ooh, and... oh man. Anyway, yeah, and Mel, of course, was here and taking care of Benson. We do not have Benson Camp today, and the reason why is because of my silliness or weariness or just not thinking, whatever. I left my phone there at the airport in my mom's car when she dropped me off. I'm just going to tell you all the embarrassing things here, right? And so I don't have my phone. And so I don't have the ability to record Benson Camp. So we don't have Benson Camp for you today because I couldn't go make it. Oh, thank you very much, Sam, for that super chat. Very appreciated. Good. I'm glad you liked that answer on that. Happy to follow up on stuff for you guys. So if you ask me something and I don't know, just remind me and I'll get back onto it, right? Anyway, yeah, travel weary. So that's a thing. But enough harping about that, I guess. The other thing about going out and seeing family is how exhausting it can be because they can just have such wildly different views on things, and man, and it can just be it can be deflating, it can be difficult, it can be challenging, and at the same time you just go, okay, all right, you got to rise above some of that struggle and battle and need to be, my reality, your reality, etc., right? You need to kind of rise above that a little bit in order to just have the family and have those relationships and keep them going regardless of these differences of strong, deeply seated beliefs and ideas and opinions, right? Whether they're religious or political or culture war stuff or whatever, there's an inherent value in family that can't ever be ignored or put aside and transcends those opinions and ideas, or at least that's how I think about family. And I know a lot of folks out there have blown up their families over politics or over religion. And I get it. Believe me, I do. I get the strength of the emotional, investment in our ideas and our and let me say, our emotional investment in what we think of as our future. And this led me to, as it always does, it led me to, you know, a lot of introspection and a lot of like, okay, let's look at this, right? What lessons can we learn? I'm always doing that in my own life and others, right? And let me go ahead while I'm sitting here monologuing. Let me throw up the Q&A. Please put your questions here. Start Q&A. Good. So we have the Q&A box going now. So if you want to go up and click on that and start throwing your questions in, that'd be awesome. And I have not, Mary Cat, just to respond to the comments here, I am not at all following the Louis Repetto thing. I'm not following any of that stuff, just so you guys know. I don't watch any SPTV. I dive in on Reddit every now and again and check out what's going on. I'll hop in on Discord every now and again and see what people are saying in one little group, and that's about it. That's my sum total of exposure to that whole SPTV thing now, right? By choice and design. For my own mental health as well as my sanity, I have to stay away from that crap. The drama of SPTV is just too much, and the you know, and whether there's SA and this and that and the other thing going on with this stuff, I don't want to get into the middle of that nonsense. I say nonsense not because I don't think that there are true facts being shared, but you have no idea what's true and false about any of that. None. And none of those people are reliable narrators. So it's very, very difficult to parse out truth, right? And in fact, let's talk about that, because that's what this kind of got me onto. And I feel that this is, you're going to get a little monologue right now, and I'm going to try to make this short. But I feel this is important. I really do. I wouldn't go into stuff like this if I didn't think it was valuable to people. And so I want to share this with you and share some thoughts I'm having about literally the nature of reality. All right. Nothing big on Sunday morning. No big deal. You know, we're not going to dive into anything too philosophically deep, just the nature of reality. Specifically objective reality versus subjective reality. And I wish I had simpler words. I wish I had an easier way to express this, but you know, it's not, there's, because you don't want to start throwing words around like truth when you're talking about reality, because they're vastly different concepts. And I'm not some philosophy major, and I'm not pretending to be, but I do know that much. Truth has a lot of baggage, which is different baggage from the word reality. So let me just go over this stuff real fast, and you guys tell me what you think. Objective reality, like I said, I brought papers, so let's dive in. Objective reality refers to the world as it exists independently of any human beings or individuals' thoughts or feelings or perceptions. Objective reality is actually not something that we directly touch. Because it exists regardless of our behavior or observations or beliefs or assumptions. It just is what is. The actual existence of, you know, however you want to describe a material, physical, matter, energy, space, time, space, you know, these various words that get thrown about for describing the world around us. The world is as it is. Then there is the subjective reality, right? Our take on things, the personal experience of reality. And our personal experience of reality is all we get. Now when I say we don't touch objective reality, we touch it all the time, of course. I mean, gravity is objective reality. It doesn't care. It's like that expression, facts don't care what you believe, right? It's more like reality doesn't care what you believe. Facts do care what you believe. Facts change all the time based on our beliefs. one day it's okay to do a thing, and the next day it's not, right? That's a fact. But it's changed radically, right? Because our beliefs change things like that. But our beliefs don't change gravity. Our beliefs don't change the existence of black holes. And this is important because it has everything to do with how cult leaders manipulate people, right? I mean, this ties right back into all the cult stuff. But first, we got to get this concept down real clear of objective and subjective reality. A lot of people will interpret this as your truth, my truth kind of thing, right? They'll throw that truth word in there. But again, there's a lot of baggage connected with that doesn't belong when in the conversation about reality. Obviously, subjective reality can differ very greatly from one person to another. Preferences in foods, colors, emotional experiences. Feeling warm when it's objectively cold outside. That's a personal reality. You're having an experience of warmth in the middle of objectively cold temperatures, right? Like, that's an interesting thing. Those kind of contradictory experiences drive so much of our thinking, right? And so much of our of ideas about the world. So sometimes subjective experiences may contradict objective facts. Someone feels healthy, but objectively has an illness. Subjective reality often shapes how people interpret objective reality, right? Biases. We talk about every logical fallacy and bias that you have is a curve or a twist on how you view reality, right? And the philosophical debate of this has to do with philosophers and scientists debate whether objective reality can truly be known or whether all understanding is inherently subjective due to the limits of human perception. My take is that we fall short 100% of the time. I believe that human perception is frail and that it is error-ridden, but it gets us by. And we are able to, manage the world, navigate the world, enough through our perception of the world that we perceive bits and pieces of objective reality or, that kind of thing. But really what we're seeing the world through is a lot of filters. The light rays go in your eyes, the sound waves go in your ears, and your brain perceives these things, but what you end up receiving at the other end of that isn't a straight shot of just what's coming in through the light and through the sound and all that. So how do confusing these things mess people up? Well, the number one way it does is because people aren't even aware of this difference. They walk around through life thinking that their perceptions and biases and filters and ideas are objective reality and that this is the only reality. And this is where arguments come from. All right. Go back to, whoa, why was Chris thinking about all this? Because not only do arguments stem from that, but a lot of emotion stems from this too. And this is where my introspection comes into play, because I'm not sitting here trying to just badmouth my family. I love my family. But what it forced me to do was take a good hard look at the disagreements we were having ideologically, religiously, etc., and reconsider my own certainties and ideas and thinking about, the future. An awful lot of my ideas are based in how I'm predicting what's going to happen in the future. And I'm almost certainly wrong. And I happen to think that's a very, very good thing to know because it forces me to be honest with myself, to walk the walk, not just talk the talk, right? If I'm going to say things, I have to follow those things, right? And so I have to apply all the things I say right to myself and my own thinking. And this is really important for me because I have emotional biases or filters that tend to push in a little bit of a negative direction, right? And a little bit of, things are fucked and, right? And that's not always true. And that is, and as I've said many, many times, right? Those who believe they predict can predict the future. Not so much. So, so rather than trying to, so bottom line is, when you confuse objective and subjective, there can be short-term advantages in doing this. You can take advantage of other people by confusing these things. You can undermine trust. You can distort communication, and it can lead to all kinds of conflicts when objective truths are ignored, for example, scientific evidence, right? But again, even there, scientific evidence, right? Oh, but it's always filtered through human perception. So, it's a constantly changing thing. So the bottom line is, I just wanted to say that there's a difference between these two things, and it's a really good idea to check yourself before you wreck yourself sometimes in how you're perceiving or thinking about things, and being so sure that your way is the only way that it could possibly be. Right? At the end of all of that, that's kind of where I'm coming back to is don't be so sure that you let your predictions or thoughts or biases get in the way of the very real relationships that you could have with your family and with friends or with other people, over some future idea that probably isn't even going to happen. I thought that was worth saying. And I'm very long-winded, so there's my wind-up to get to that, and there you go. Okay. Let's get to your questions. See what I can do here to answer some of that. Here we go, Neil Gaiman. I knew this was going to come up. All right. Let's see what your questions are. Hey, Chris, Young Matador. How do we avoid guilt by association with cults? The awful allegations against Neil Gaiman ought to stand by themselves. I don't think he was even in the Church of Scientology when they allegedly occurred. Correct. Neil Gaiman grew up as a Scientologist and was a highly trained Scientologist. From what I was told, he was a grad 5 CS, which is way up there. That is a trained Scientologist. That's somebody who knows how to audit, use the e-meter, do all the grades, get somebody basically up to clear, do repairs on them. I mean, that was Neil Gaiman's depth of experience with the technology of Scientology before he left. That's what I understand. And he was involved with it for many, many years. And there's a lot of, content to mine about Neil Gaiman and Scientology. But at the end of the day, I think you're absolutely right. He left Scientology behind years and years and years ago, decades ago. And he doesn't practice it, as I understand it. In fact, I'm 100% sure of that. And my experience or ability to say things like that come from the fact that I was in Twin Cities for years, and his ex-wife, Mary, was the executive director of Twin Cities for a good long time while I was there. And she and I had conversations about Neil, and they were very interesting at the time. And now, I know things, right? And so I know that. I'm not claiming any treasure trove of secret knowledge about Neil Gaiman, but I am telling you what I know. And so there's that. So he's not practicing Scientology now and hasn't for a very long time. But here's where my comment on this is, I haven't watched, I flagged a Rebecca Watson video to watch about this because she brings up Neil Gaiman and Scientology, and I'm not sure where she goes with it. I haven't watched that video yet. And I've seen other people making content or talking about this. The serious conversation to be had about Scientology, Neil Gaiman, and SA is that Neil Gaiman grew up as a second-generation Scientologist. And just like me, and just like Mike Rinder, and just like everybody on SPTV and all the other second gens, that shit sticks and it stays with you, right? The Scientology that you get as a kid growing up in that stuff is not a light grade level of indoctrination. And when you go all the way in and get trained the way Neil did, you are talking about someone who is thoroughly indoctrinated in crazy ideas, right? Ideas that are absolutely destructive. an ethics and justice system that is all about group survival over the individual. The individual is nothing. The group is all. And L. Ron Hubbard convinces you as a group member that the reverse is true and that you are all and the group is really just there to support you. But it's not true. In action, Scientology acts like a destructive cult and an authoritarian group where you are punished for not conforming. It's a compliance culture. So Neil Gaiman grew up in that. To think that that didn't have an effect on him in his adult life or in his actions or beliefs or ideas would be, ridiculous. Of course it formed who he is. Just like it formed who I am. Right? All of us. I mean, there's no way around that. What I don't know is what Neil Gaiman ever did to get over that. I have no idea whether he got a minute of therapy. I'm kind of thinking he probably did. But I have no idea. And that's where my knowledge of Neil's recovery from Scientology ends, is he left, but I don't know what happened after that. So I'm going to make an assumption right now that there are lingering effects of Scientology in Neil Gaiman's mind. And that Scientology, in a way, could very well have influenced his behavior in regards to all these allegations. Right? And they're horrible allegations. I mean, they are like, wow, this guy is really a monster. He does stuff that just doesn't, there's just no concept of boundaries with this man, right? He just violates people's spaces and just goes in and he is master and they are servant and this is his thing. And of course, that kind of thinking, is what makes me think, yeah, that's, I could see some Scientology there, right? Now, is it required, though? Now, that all being said, is it required that this be Scientology originated, or that Scientology has somehow influenced Neil to be this way? It's not required. He could have fully recovered from Scientology's bad effects on him in a way, and yet still have other things going on that could cause that. Obviously, because there are plenty of people who never had anything to do with Scientology who go full in on SA and horrible, horrible things to people, right? So it doesn't have to be that the motivations or beliefs or ideas that exist in Neil's, and needs and desires and obsessions, those kind of words too, that apply to Neil here, it's hard to say until we got more solid answers from him about that, or more knowledge, or if I could get more about, did he ever recover from Scientology? Did he ever get an ounce of therapy? What kind? What did he do? How did he try to recover from this, right? Like, there's a lot to know about that. And we don't have a clue because he's never said a goddamn word about it as far as I know. I don't know of one place anywhere where Neil has written about or talked about his Scientology experience in any real substantive way. And that book about the suicide and stuff that's not Neil. That's an incident or event that happened. I don't think that has too much to do with writing about Neil, thinking about Neil, right? And if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments or whatever. I'm keen to hear what y'all think about this. But those are my thoughts on Neil. Now, how do we avoid guilt by association with cults? Well, you just kind of think the thought through, like I just kind of walk through, right? You don't know right now. And so it's a mystery. It's a question mark. There's a lot of question marks right now around this man. And I don't know that we're ever going to get all those questions answered. Hard to say. But you avoid the guilt by association by actually applying critical thinking and applying your gray matter to the knowledge, the data that you have. And sort of parsing through, well, again, what's factual, what's subjective, objective reality, subjective reality, right? So I'll throw that out there for you. Let's carry on. And feel free to ask me more about any of this. Joe DeCeppo, if an e-meter malfunctions, do you call tech support or an exorcist? Do suppressive people refuse to split the bill? Do Scientologists believe in aliens with allergies? Okay, Joe. E-meters are serviced by the Church of Scientology, and you would contact, I think, Bridge Publications or Golden Era or something and get your meter serviced. Yeah, okay, let's carry on. Ex-Scion, do Sea Org staff have a retirement plan? What about Social Security? Sea Org have Social Security taken out of their pay. When you're getting $50 a week, then that means you're getting $4 and I think about 91 cents taken out of your pay every week for the Social Security. There is no retirement plan of any kind. There's no 401k, no assets, reserves, no interest payment accounts, no, nothing. There's nothing. So, so when you come out, you have nothing, right? It's just not there. You have Social Security. That's it. Okay, DS. Has SPTV single-handedly destroyed the anti-Scientology online movement? I may have said or inferred something like that recently in my, sort of angst over and, sort of about all of that. But no, it really hasn't. Let's be real about this, right? No, it hasn't. I mean, I'm still here. Lots of people are. And we're still fighting the fight. And so it's not destroyed, but what it has done is dispersed it. And sort of thrown a nuclear bomb into the middle of it, right? It's kind of blown it up in a way where there's just all these broken parts and pieces all over the place in a very real way, in a very real sense. But healing's possible, right? And will happen. And other things that don't heal, people will move on past, and new people will come out and come up and start channels and stuff like that. I mean, that's just kind of the progress of it. YouTube itself is changing as a platform and becoming less popular. And I'm thinking that YouTube is not going to be the medium of exposure of Scientology for a whole lot longer. But that doesn't mean the fight against Scientology is dead. YouTube is not the be-all end-all of fighting Scientology, and never was. It was just a way for individual ex-members to have a voice and reach an audience. That's why YouTube was interesting and important to the movement, but it's not make break. This is not what brings Scientology down. This is what informs you guys and the world about the abuses of Scientology, but there are other media that do a better job of that. Documentaries, for example, right? Like Going Clear. If we call Scientology in the Aftermath a documentary series, because it is, that does a better job than YouTube does of reaching more people in a emotionally impactful way with enough facts and evidence-based information that it makes a difference. So Lawrence Wright, a Pulitzer Prize winning author, writing a book about Scientology, that has legs, right? That's something that goes. And will we have more of that in the future? Maybe. Kind of depends on what happens with Scientology itself, really, because the fact of the matter is that it could implode very rapidly. I learned some things that I'm not totally ready to share yet, but there are some things happening internally that with Scientology that have been very encouraging to me. I said a few years ago, they're pulling in their flippers as far as the missions and the orgs and the Sea Org bases. You can see them contracting. Right? If Scientology is kind of this octopus, then the tentacles are contracting inward. That's a fact. And I knew it was happening. And I think I said many years ago, that's how it's going to probably happen, is through contraction, gradual contraction. What I didn't know is how fast that was going to happen. It's probably a good place to talk about this. I think COVID might have hit them harder than we thought. That's conjecture on my part. But what isn't conjecture is that this process of pulling in the flippers is going faster than I thought it would. I think I said a few years ago that I was thinking like 10 years, 15 years, we'll probably see the orgs being cut adrift, right? Cast aside, not really being managed or run or operated for, new public in and book sales and the business of Scientology, according to L. Ron Hubbard. The orgs haven't really been operating that way in a very long time. But I think COVID hit these guys harder than I thought, because the flipper pulling in part of it, according to the data that I'm getting now, is happening a lot faster than I had thought it would. Where I thought we had 10 or 15 years, no, it's actually happening right now. And I am very encouraged by that. Very. All right, that's good news. That's very good news, because these orgs not getting the direction that they were getting, like to go from bad, abusive, kind of fucked up management to no management at all. It's kind of where things are at right now. And wow, is that interesting. So Scientology is sort of gotten simple statement. I don't know why I'm struggling with this, but basically all of our actions and efforts on YouTube, in the books that all of us have written, in the exposure that all of us have been doing, we have basically been pushing Scientology over the cliff. And I don't know that we realized that how effective we were in doing that. So it appears to me right now that things are speeding up with its demise. Which is not to say it's gone next year or 2 years or 3 years from now. I'm still saying there's a ways to go, but it's going faster than I thought. And that's really good news. Okay. Ex-witness Vernon, do you think Pam Bondi will be 100% confirmed? How much involved is she with Scientology? Hard to say whether she'll be confirmed. I very rarely see... people go to these confirmation hearings and not get confirmed. So somebody will have to let me know if that actually happens, because I don't remember too many times when people were thrown up for stuff and then they get to the hearing level of this, and then somehow, it becomes this public circus spectacle where, senators and stuff are trying to, get sound bites and gotchas and stuff. But I don't know. I really hope she doesn't become Attorney General. She is solidly in Scientology's pocket. And that whole White House influence thing is no joke, right? They might be declining in numbers, but they are not declining in money yet. Let me be clear about that. They might be losing churches and losing influence geographically, but they are not losing influence financially, at least not that I can see yet. I haven't seen any evidence of that. So Pam Bondi, she's connected. Is she connected to the degree that David Miscavige could call her and have a phone conversation with her? No, she's not that connected. It's not like that. At least I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think so. I think it's more that they have sort of become what she would consider an ally to her and her causes and her efforts, right? And vice versa. There's some kind of mutual thing going on there. The exact nature of that, I don't know, because I don't understand her as a person or what motivates her other than blatant thirst for power, right? I don't really know her as a person. So hard for me to go into too much more as to why she is so cozied up with Scientology, but she very clearly is. All right. Angry Chode. Have you ever read Revolt in the Stars? Oh, yes. If so, what do you think? A lot of things. I did a whole video about it. What do you think of... Okay, good. So I very, very much would like you to go check that out, because we went on a tear. I actually walked through the screenplay, or treatment, or whatever you want to call that crap that Hubbard wrote. It is bad. Revolt in the Stars is one of the most revolting things I've ever read from L. Ron Hubbard. I love saying that, but it's true. The characters, the names, it is third grade level storytelling. Seriously, it's so bad. Yeah, I mean, you know, my 7-year-old nephew could write better work than Hubbard when it comes to Revolt in the Stars. What do you think about milkshakes that contain alcohol? I have had some, and they are tasty, especially around the holidays. How big of a loss was Mike Render's passing? Well, a couple of weeks ago, I literally cried here. I mean, it sucked. It was awful. I have still been processing Mike's loss. Yeah, I'm still very broken up about that. John O'Nolan. The book, Clear Body, Clear Mind, is there anything useful in it? No. It's pure pseudoscience from beginning to end. Please hear me on this. Please hear me on this. Even the vitamin stuff. None of it's true. None of it. These chemicals, the claims that the Church of Scientology makes that LSD specifically, other water-soluble chemicals, the Church of Scientology specifically states that these water-soluble chemicals that pass through your body within 24 hours actually lodge in your fatty tissues and stay there, and is the reason why people have LSD flashbacks. This is proven bullshit. We know this is not true. And the entire basis of the purification rundown is that LSD and other chemicals will lodge themselves in the fatty tissues of your body. Scientology insists that it's this way with a range of chemicals, some of which they are right about, but most of which they're wrong about. And the process by which you can detoxify your body of, say, chemicals, industrial strength chemicals, cleaning products, paints, varnishes, things like that, like really heavy duty stuff that is truly chemically damaging to your body. The way that you go about detoxing a body that has been poisoned this way is not by going into a sauna and sweating it out. That is the least efficient way of detoxifying your body internally like that. You have to let the systems of your body do their work and not think that your body is broken somehow or just doesn't work, and Hubbard system is somehow the way that you're going to bypass your body to detoxify it. That's not how any of this works at all. And the vitamins just add more pain to the whole picture, because you don't need any of those supplementary vitamins. Most of the time, 99.9% of you don't need any of that stuff. You need medical advice and testing to determine what you're low in your personal body as to what you need to supplement it with. But, Linus Pauling and so many other people over the years, going back to the very first multi-level marketing scheme, sold everybody on vitamins. And the need for vitamins and how you must have all these vitamins. And it's $1 billion industry, and it's all crap. 99% of it is total bullshit. And Hubbard loved pseudoscientific health bullshit. He loved it. So that's the purification rundown. And Clear Body, Clear Mind is just a book that is the collection of Hubbard's writings on all this nonsense combined into a book. I've read all of it, right? I'm very, very familiar with this stuff. I delivered purification rundowns when I was in Scientology for years, and I was very, very familiar with this. I oversaw the delivery of it, right? And people die doing this. There was a guy who died under my watch. I mean, not directly under me. I was in management at the time. And OSA put the complete kibosh on even investigating or checking out what happened. That was the day I learned how powerful OSA really is in Scientology. Okay, so Jono also asks, was this book released after Hubbard died? Yeah, but the writings were Hubbard's, right? It was just a compendium of his writings. Why hasn't Scientology written any books for so many years? Because L. Ron Hubbard died. Couldn't they? They could, but they'd have to find Hubbard writings, right? And so what you get is there are some of the books of Scientology that are just L. Ron Hubbard dictated them or wrote them down. And then there are books that are actually compendiums or collections of Hubbard's writings. The Second Dynamic is one such book. The All About Child Dynetics is a book like that is a collection put together by other people. So that's kind of how that works. Okay, Sam Slade. Is it ethical for indie/ex-scions to build careers as auditors without any secular counseling qualifications? 2, speaking of parasocial relationships, have you looked at the abuses of online fandom? Okay. I do not believe personally in my own system of what is good and bad and right and wrong. I do not believe it is ethical to be a Scientology practitioner, in or out of the church. I do not believe that there is any such thing as the ethical practice of Scientology, any more than I would think that there's an ethical practice to, I don't know, you make these examples, these comparisons, and people's heads explode. So I don't want to, go too off beam with that. But I'm just going to say it's, like Nazis or something, right? I'm just going to say it's not ethical because you're not... People who don't understand basic psychology or eschew it or reject it, like Scientologists do. Willfully or not, they do not understand what it is that auditing really is. And auditing is not a process or procedure meant to do what it says it does. It's not meant to eradicate your past traumas. It only says that's what it's doing. It's meant to condition you to comply, to conform with groupthink. Every auditing session is more and more of a push in that direction. It's training you, conditioning you as a pre-clear to comply, to conform, to follow the instructions and rules. And you're following a ritual when you're doing auditing. These are ritualistic practices. In that, what I mean by that is there's a process, and the process is more important than you are in the auditing session. I talk about how they lock the door, how they believe the e-meter more than they believe you, how you're forced to answer questions that are put to you, and you can't leave the room until you have satisfied the auditor that you have complied with the requirements of the auditing session. That's a control operation. And you're the subject. You're the target, right? You're the one who's being controlled. Every single auditing session that happens follows everything I just said. Whether it's objective auditing or subjective auditing, it's all, everything I just said applies. So there is no way to turn that into something healthy for people, because it's inherently unhealthy and mind-numbing and mind-controlling, mind-altering, like all these things. It's all there. And we can break down the anatomy of an auditing session, and I can get more detailed about this, but I think you get the idea. I hope. that I'm being clear about that, right? So how could it possibly be ethical to do that to people? Even if you don't want to control this person and you think you're releasing this person from their charge. That's what Scientologists think, is that they are taking real electrical charge, and they are getting the person to strip it off of themselves through this ritualistic practice. That's their subjective reality of what's going on. But just because they think that doesn't make it true. And it doesn't make them ethical practitioners, even if they delusionally believe they are ethical practitioners. I'm sorry, but objective reality has something else to say about that. And you don't get to just ignore that and go, well, I don't believe you, Chris. I don't care if you believe me or not. You believing me has nothing to do with the truth of what I'm saying right now. Right? So that's that. As far as the second question, great questions, by the way. I have a passing familiarity and personal experience, of course, with the abuses of online fandom. I've been online fan of many, many things, right? I've been in the communities. I've seen the insults fly and the antagonism and the sort of extreme belief that people can have, whether it's in a gaming community or a movie community or a book appreciation club or something. People can get really passionate about this stuff and really invested in it in very... You know, sometimes you start wondering, like, maybe this is a little bit too much, you know? I've seen, especially like on Reddit and stuff, you see whole communities build up around video games and stuff. And man, you go in there with some criticism and you're going to hear about it. I mean, wow, you know? So yes, so I have seen that or experienced that, but I haven't studied it. I haven't really read any literature or gone down any rabbit holes on fandom as such. So a lot of what I say about that is really me extrapolating from what I know about cults and psychology and stuff. So that's what I can say about that right now. It's real, that's for sure. But it's not centrally led. It's not a cult, right? Fandom is interesting because fandom centers around, it could be centering around a book or an item, right? It doesn't always center around a human being. So it's not always culty that way, where there's a codependency created. You can't be codependent with a video game. It doesn't work, right, that way, because the video game's not a thing. It's just a video game, right? So you can't have that codependent relationship. You can't build a cult relationship. Fandom can be slightly different that way, but it can be just as extreme of a investment. And I think if people are investing themselves to that degree in games or books or movies or something, I'd say there's probably something missing in their life in real world connection that game or book or something is somehow being a substitute for. Because I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that human relationships are should be thought of as the senior relationships in our lives. You know, connecting with other human beings and the value of those relationships is great. It's incredible what you can get out of a healthy relationship. So I think that's, you know, really where we should be putting the brunt of our attention. But so when people get overly invested in these things, I think you could probably safely say there's a deficiency in other parts of their lives. But I don't want to say that in a way to put down fandom. I am a fan, right? I love all kinds of stuff. So, you know, how far are you going to take it, right? Okay. Xian, what kind of government would you say we are headed for these days? Bernie Sanders and others have said we are going straight into an oligarchy. Have you heard of the iron law of oligarchy? Oh, thank you very much, Sam, for your continuing super chats. I will encourage others to do the same. Okay, let's see here. Iron law of oligarchy? Is that what you... Yeah, here we go. The iron law of oligarchy is a political theory first developed by the German-born Italian sociologist Robert Michels in his 1911 book, political parties. It asserts that rule by an elite, or oligarchy, is inevitable as an iron law within any democratic organization as part of the tactical and technical necessities of the organization. Now, that's interesting. Well, this seems like a little bit of a build on anacyclosis. Let me check this out here. You know, a further analysis along those same lines, right? Because if we go to that, let's see if we can. There we go. Now, now this is interesting because here actually we have a little bit of competing theories, because it appears that the anacyclosis model states that you go from aristocracy to oligarchy, and then that goes over into democracy, which then, in its corrupted form, descends into ochlocracy, which is ruled by the mob, right? When democracy dies, it all falls apart, and then you get mob rule, and then we go back to square one with monarchy, right, with a strong man. That's the theory of anacyclosis. So the iron law of oligarchy, according to this German guy, is actually no. Democracies are gonna in their corrupted form are gonna fall down into oligarchy, and that's interesting. Oligarchy here defined as a form of government in which power rests with a small number of people. These people may or may not be distinguished by one or several characteristics such as nobility, fame, wealth, education, or corporate, religious, political, or military control. Throughout history, power structures considered to be oligarchies have often been viewed as coercive, relying on public obedience or oppression to exist. Aristotle pioneered the use of the term as meaning rule by the rich, contrasting it with aristocracy, arguing that oligarchy was the perverted form of aristocracy, which is where the anacyclosis stuff comes in. So different, maybe competing political theories there, but that's what oligarchy is. I thought it was interesting how Google, apparently oligarchy was like the most searched term on Google or something, right? You know, during Biden's address on this, because I think he said something about this, if I read right. I would say that if I were being honest, I kind of think we're already there in a way, but I think not really. I'd say we're definitely going there. A lot of reasons why. We don't have to go into all that today, and I'm not going to try to be, Mr. Poli-sci today. But yeah, I think we're going in that direction. I was just so surprised at how few people knew what it meant. When I was like, oh, it's the most searched term on Google, I was like, didn't you guys already get this? Like, we've been living this for a while now. Like, how head in the sand are you people? Like, come on. This is what's going on, So I think, I was a little frustrated by that. I'm sorry if I misunderstood your question there, Sam, on the fandom. Maybe I didn't understand that term. Anyway, let's carry on. I don't want to spend too long on that. I've already done my whole anacyclosis talk, so you guys kind of know where I'm at on that, right? Is that there are cycles of history. We are in them. We are not immune from cycles of history. Just because we're the United States and we're the greatest nation that's ever lived and all of that doesn't mean we're immune to social psychology and group psychology. And that's what drives anacyclosis, right? Between economic factors and group psychology, you get this interplay of people responding to the challenges of government and challenges of leadership and being managed. And so power ends up being distributed to one person. It ends up being distributed to a few people. It ends up being distributed to everybody. And we cycle through these phases of our governments or our existence as human beings. And we've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. I think it's a valid theory. I think it's very interesting. And I think it's a nice interesting way of thinking about things because it removes the theory of the, it's sort of, it doesn't have to, but it kind of, for me at least, it sort of contradicts or disproves the great man theory of history, right? Where history is driven by, great figures who draw energy or whatever people to them, right? And move the ball down the road. I don't believe in that theory. That's an old Thomas Carlyle theory that's still got legs in some circles, but I don't believe it's true. I think the complexity of our existence is far more complex than great men, who happen to stand out in history. I think they're just as much products of their age and time as anybody, as anything else. So that's kind of how I see things, is that there's this sort of thing that's going on, and we're all just part of it. In the same way that we're all traffic on the freeway. We're just part of it. And you're not always in charge. In fact, you're very rarely in charge. You're only contributory to the bigger picture. We're all fish in the stream, so to speak. And it can, depending on how you choose to use that information, that can be inflating or deflating, that can be empowering or disempowering. You have to figure out your place in the world and come to a place of acceptance about it in order for that to maybe be empowering or be at least not, nihilism inducing or something, I suppose. But again, objective reality versus subjective reality, right? Like, what's the real? Well, the real is that we're all in this together, and none of us have enough of a say to impose our will on everybody else. And so we have to kind of go with things. And if we want to enact change, we have to find other people who are working on or want that same kind of change and work with them and make it happen. That's how things happen. Kind of simple, right? So simple. Why am I even saying it? But because people don't even know what oligarchy is, right? So how simple do we have to get in talking about this stuff? I mean, probably pretty simple. So I hope I'm being clear. Okay. Young Matador, if you'd stayed in the Church of Scientology, would it be likely for you to have ended up in the Hole or somewhere similar? No, I would never have ended up in the Hole. The Hole was a David Miscavige invention at the gold base that only existed there for his inner circle, the highest level Scientologists, meaning the most committed, most extreme, most fanatical. Because that's who gets to the very, very top. Remember that as part of this whole picture of when you look at the picture of Scientology, remember the guys at the top are the most committed. That's how they get there. It's not just through good deeds. You have to pass tons of loyalty tests. And you have to get security checked, on the e-meter and all that stuff. So there's a ton of stuff involved in getting people up to that level where David Miscavige is at. And once you're there, then you find out, unfortunately, that you are, not only at his 24/7 beck and call, but that he can abuse you as liberally and often as he wants. And there's nothing you get to do about that because you're in a world now where that's okay. And everybody just kind of lets that happen. And that's your world. And people generally respond by going with the flow when they're in a situation like that, rather than trying to buck it or run out the door or fight or something like that. We see that, right? I mean, you see how people are. So that's the group of people who ended up in the Hole. And in a way, this is going to be an interesting thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't know if it's possible for David Miscavige to do the Hole anywhere else except where he did it. I don't know. I don't know if he could get away with it. Just something I wonder. Could he set up something like that in PAC? He could, but could he get away with it? Or would the people at that level not really put up with it the same way the people at the top did. And I say this, and this is what I mean when I say it's going to be an interesting thing to say, because it's going to sound like I'm somehow putting those people down. I'm not. It's not a matter of put down. It's a matter of seeing where their heads were at, right? Like lower level Sea Org members are not as committed to the cause, to David Miscavige, to Scientology. They're just not. They're in the Sea Org. They're there. They signed the contract. But there are lots of ways you can get somebody to sign that contract. And they are not all in this fanatical headspace. That's something you develop. I've said that the Sea Org are the fanatics of Scientology. And, you know, I'll stand by that to the degree that they are way, way, way more committed than any other level of Scientology. But I think you see what I'm saying, right? Within the Sea Org, you have levels of commitment, and the guys at the top are, you know, all the way in. Anyway, I'm sure you guys get the point. I don't know if he would have been able to pull that off in PAC or at Flag even, you know, maybe. I mean, shit, he could be running a hole right now at Flag and none of us would even know. So anything's possible, but I just somehow wonder whether it would have been possible. But I was never in any danger of being put in anything like the hole. I did the RPF. That was bad enough. Ugh, boy, was that bad. Okay. Ooh, so many questions. Okay, let me see if I can power through some of these here. X-Cyan, have you considered moving to another country to get away from the U.S. government policies? Where would you go? Mel and I have already been down that rabbit hole, and we are not going anywhere. But yeah, we have very, very seriously thought about that. And the fact of the matter is that there isn't anywhere else in the world that's any better than it is here. And if you're looking at quality of life considerations, the United States is the place to stay. We're about to see over the next coming generations, unless something changes, and it could change very, very easily, it could change. But given current trajectories, right, we're seeing population declines, we're going to see more economic stress and anxiety, and we're going to see a increase in the differences between the ultra uber rich and everybody else. And everybody else is going to start looking more and more like everybody else, because the poor are just going to stay poor, and there's going to be more and more and more people becoming poor. And that's the trajectory we're on right now. I don't say this is doom and gloom. I say this is truth, is like, this is where it's going. Somebody want to step up and change this? Because at any time, this could be changed. But right now, right, this is where things are going. And it's a big, big, complicated picture, but that's kind of the summary of it. But moving to another country isn't going to change that. And it's not going to make it any easier for Mal and I to escape the consequences of what's going on. Because what's going on, like COVID, it's a worldwide phenomenon. What's going on is going on all over the place. And what happens in the United States affects everywhere else in the world, unfortunately, but it does. And so that's the situation, right? So leaving is not really an option, at least not right now. Things get worse. We'll see. But right now, we've decided to stay. Ex-witness Vernon, did you read Leah Remini's Substack about her feelings on Mike Rinder's death and his enemies? Yes, of course I did. Yes. As far as comments on it, you know, I love Leah. I love Leah. She is awesome. She's an awesome, awesome person. I don't know that I would have chosen to say some of the things that she said, but she's Leah. She gets to say whatever the hell she wants. And I support her, right? And I know who she's talking about when she's, you know, when she's throwing the F words or F bombs around, right? And she's not talking about you guys. She's not talking about everybody. She's talking about a couple people. The couple people, by the way, who just had to rush out response videos in 24 hours to Leah's statement. Those people. That's who she's talking about, right? I support Leah. Okay. Here's the complicated part, though. And this is the sucky part. This is the part that just sucks. The sucky part is that I actually support everybody. I support their right to speak. I support their right to exist. I support their right to speak. I support their right to have opinions. I support their right to have a voice and to use it, right? To all those things. Maybe some of those are the same thing said different ways, right? But whatever. I support all of that. I want nothing else but that. And no matter what they're saying, I support all those rights. But when you're trashing the people who have been the most effective leaders and fighters against Scientology that have ever lived, when you're the person trashing those people, I do not support your motives. And I do not support what you are intending to do, which is to bring them down so that you can appear better or more powerful or more influential than them, because you're not. None of us are. None of us even come close on YouTube to what Mike and Leah and Alex Gibney and Lawrence Wright did. I mean, let's be real, right? I don't care how many millions of views you're getting. You didn't come close. I haven't. And I'm fine with that. But they're not. They're not fine with that. And that's weird. And that's where things get really messed up, you know? Because if we can just acknowledge our role and position in all of this and work together to fight the fight, then we have a group. Then we have unity and we have something that works. But that ain't what those folks are invested in or involved in or want. And I'm so sad about that. So I support their rights, but I hate what they're doing with them. You know, and that's why I'm all adversarial, because I just hate what they're doing. It's just so fucked up. Okay. Ex-Scient, at times, do you find yourself slipping into old Scientology ways of thinking about life and how you handle it? No, not anymore. That's what I mean about being recovered from Scientology. And thank you for asking me this, because it's a great way of kind of clarifying what that means, right? What is recovery? I don't think in Scientology terms anymore. I don't think in Scientology solutions. I don't think about the first thing that comes to mind for me, or the second or third or fourth thing is no longer he's an SP, he's PTS, he's got misunderstood words, he's got overts, he needs to go see the ethics officer, he's out ethics. All those labels and ways of thinking about people are gone. I don't think that way anymore. And you've seen me, you know, bumble about trying to figure out how to think, you know, and how to adopt new ways of thinking. But I can tell you with certainty, those ways of thinking are gone. And I just don't think like a Scientologist anymore. And it was so interesting the day that I realized that, because I realized it when I was like, so weirded out by what Scientologists were doing, you know? And I was reading some Hubbard and I was like, how does somebody make sense of this? And I was like, I've done it. I've finally stopped thinking like a Scientologist, you know? And it actually made it a little harder for me to answer your questions sometimes about Scientology. Anyway, I think that's hilarious. But okay, ex-witness Vernon, even if democracy survives after Trump, how much damage will he do before he leaves? Well, he's raiding the cookie jar, like I said, right? You got guys who are very much into that. It's all about personal empowerment for these guys, right? They say all this, but they're doing all of this over here. And, you know, and we can't pretend to know all the stuff they're doing, because you just don't get that obsessed with them, please, right? It's not worth your time. You know, how much damage will he do? I don't know. You know, probably a bit. You know, Trump's a destructive guy. He's a bull in a china shop. So he tears things up. That's what he does. He doesn't know how to build or create things at all. And it's weird, isn't it? Because he's like a building real estate guy. He's supposed to be a builder. He builds things. No, he doesn't. Right? He's just not that guy. But I'm not going to do, you know, predictions here beyond the fact that beyond this, you get me thinking. I think the biggest damage that people like Donald Trump are doing to our country is not what he's doing to our system so much as what he's doing to us and to our relationships with our family and friends and the cohesiveness and the sort of fabric of our culture. Donald Trump rips through these things like a goddamn tornado, and he doesn't give a shit about any of the damage that he does. As long as he personally profits from it, that's all that matters. And anyone who thinks differently than that is just delusional. And I'm sorry, but that's where that man lives. It's where he lives. It's all he sees is personal opportunity for himself in every single thing he does. That's what it is to be a narcissist. And Trump is absolutely, by any clinical standard, Trump is absolutely a raging narcissist. And you have got to understand that that means he cannot think of anybody else. He can't. So what kind of damage does somebody like that do? Well, like a cult leader, he gets people to act like he does. He gets people to think like he does. It's contagious. It's like a contagion. Bandy Lee calls it a mind contagion, right? Like this mass hysteria kind of phenomena that happens with this is a kind of, it acts like a virus. And I love the way that this kind of thing is taken and twisted around to the woke mind virus and this kind of thing by these assholes, right? By Elon Musk and these guys. You know, they take every single thing that we try to use or say to define their psychopathy and their pathology, and they twist it and turn it on, you know, efforts to make the world better for people or for minorities is somehow a mind virus. It's so twisted. It's so fucked up, right? And that's the real damage that they do, is the damage they do to the people of this country. You know, and the way that people think about each other and the way people interact with each other as a result of that. That's what I think it's a little hard for me to predict how much damage, more damage Trump's going to do over the next 4 years with that, right? It's really hard to tell, but I know what's going to happen. Okay, ex-Scion. A flyer I received, Hubbard was quoted, "It's time to get very busy and clear this planet." I don't know when he said that, but don't you think Hubbard would be very pissed off at the lack of progress? Oh my God. Oh, yes. Yeah. L. Ron Hubbard. If L. Ron Hubbard, I've said this many times, but let me say it again. If L. Ron Hubbard came back today, heads would roll. Up and down Scientology. I mean, absolutely heads would roll, right? Starting with David Miscavige's. He'd be toast. So toast. Yeah. Hubbard would be furious at the current state of Scientology. Bobby Rothman. Yeah, well, I love seeing some of the new names in the questions this week. Are Scientologists likely believing that the people affected by the Cali fires are to blame for their own misfortune? Absolutely they are. Ultimately, in Scientology, you are always responsible for your own condition. And if something bad happened to you, you did things to create a vacuum in your own space that pulls it in. That's the expression they use. You pulled it in. That means you did bad deeds, morally questionable things. And because you did that, and you know you did that, you have made yourself a target for bad things to happen to you. It's kind of karmic sort of thinking, but Hubbard doesn't explain it in terms of a supernatural force outside of you that is enacting justice on you. You're doing it to yourself. But ultimately, you are responsible. So yes, every single person whose house burned down, yep, that was kind of on you. Now, they might not necessarily say that out loud, you know, in mixed company, but that's what Scientologists believe. Oh, right. Um, John O'Nolan, would you say that Scientology staff milling outside their orgs smoking is a bad look for potential recruits? Yeah, you think? What about their uniforms? Have they always looked daggy? Do they ever change? Yeah, those uniforms were supposed to be a big step up for them, right? And instead, they just look like a bunch of, morticians or something. I don't know where David Miscavige's head is at with that stuff, but yes, Jono, I would say that, yes, that would definitely be a bad look for recruits. OBG Foster, if I ask a question 3 will make it to the queue. Apparently so. Okay, John O'Nolan. All right, here's a decent question. What exactly was SPTV? I only watch your channel pretty much. Okay, SPTV is really just a sort of loose collection of YouTube channels that were working together behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, collaborating. A lot of collaboration was going on between various YouTubers who had fairly small channels, and they were growing them by working together under the moniker of SPTV. If I remember right, Alex is the one who came up with that label to start with, and Aaron grabbed it and they created a logo and all of this and started kind of loosely using it. It was never a formal organized thing. There's no 501c3 or any nonsense like that. It was just a moniker and a branding that was used, right? And it was something that I was never really part of, because by the time that really got going, Aaron had already been publicly attacking me and my channel and my work, and others kind of jumped on that bandwagon rather than listen to anything I had to say. And that's where I and SPTV parted ways. And that was probably about 2 years ago. So that's what it was. And as I understand it now, it is officially been declared dead, I guess, and good riddance as far as I'm concerned. It was really Aaron's effort to try to monopolize and control all the content on YouTube about Scientology, which he's still trying to do, in a nutshell. No name in NW. Are you aware of any class action lawsuit that would allow ex-SO and ex-staff to get paid retroactively for their years or decades of labor? That could be a belated retirement package for some of us. Oh, that'd be a nice hope. That'd be a real nice hope. But no, there's no such class action suit, and none would ever have any legs. You would never get anywhere in a court trying to sue for that. Church of Scientology is under no legal obligation to pay its staff anything. And we all, as staff members, signed multiple contracts stating exactly that. We are religious volunteers. We are not entitled to any recompense or salary. There is no salary, and there are no benefits to this job. It literally says that in the contract, and we all stupidly signed it anyway because we were goddamn idiots, and we had no idea. Well, objective reality versus subjective reality, isn't it? Right? I'm just going to harp on that for a little bit, because that was the case. We all were so buried in our subjective reality that we were sure Scientology was the group that was never going to screw us over. These were the people who had nothing but our best interests in their hearts. Not just in their minds, in their hearts. We thought we had found our home. That's how badly we were lied to. But we were lied to. And those contracts are the objective reality. And that reality is, screw you, you just got screwed, right? That's what that is. And there is no legal basis to go after those labor cost or whatever, or compensation, because we were never entitled to it in the first place, and we signed our name that we knew that. Don't ever do that. Please. Hear me again, right? Just these life lessons that are so important. Just don't sign things that you don't understand. They get you every time. And who amongst us does not understand this concept already from the terms of service of every social media platform that none of us have read the TOSs on? We all signed on, and then we get screwed by these companies, and we go, well, I didn't know. You signed it, man. That's the real world we live in. I don't mean to get all harsh with you, No Name. I'm just, this isn't directed at you personally. I just mean in general. This is what we did because we were idiots. And we literally signed our rights away. And the courts don't care. They don't care. The law is the law. Caring has nothing to do with it. Right? And the contract law is what it is. You sign your name, you agree, that's it. So please, out there, learn from our mistakes, you know, even if we don't all the time. All right, Bo Beats and the Darvoed Sheep. Hi, Chris. Did you know Louis Repetto in or out of Church Scientology? Also, did you know of his sexual abuse history towards women in or out? I had no idea of the level of secrecy surrounding his crimes. Yeah, I had no idea either. I knew Louis I knew he was a supervisor in a course room in ASHO. That's what I knew about Louis Repetto when I was a Sea Org member. I didn't know him personally or interact with him in any real significant way. We weren't friends or even associates, really. He was just a Sea Org member that was in a course room that I oversaw and managed. You know, via the director of training, via Aaron as the technical, and then technical secretary, and then me. So I would issue orders to Aaron. Aaron was supposed to issue orders to the DFT, but he never did. And that was and then Louis was down below there. So that was where he was at on the org command structure, you could say, compared to where I was at. So I had very, very little interaction with him, but I recognized his face. And I had no idea about his sexual abuse history in or out of the church. I was not privy to that data. I could have known that information, but I just never really investigated him or had any reason to. So I didn't know anything about any of that. And that's what I can say about that. Bud123, are there books you would recommend about social dynamics in cults? Do cults use the same undue influence techniques, or are they very similar? I would recommend a book to you called Cults in Our Midst. Let me look this up here real fast, because I think that's probably what you're looking for in terms of describing. Yeah, Cults in Our Midst. This is Margaret Singer wrote this book. And Margaret Singer is like real hardcore in this field, in the field of cults and understanding cults. So I would recommend that one to start with. I'm not going to, I won't go further than that today. Cults do use the same influence technique, undue influence techniques. Yeah, they're very, very, very similar. There are only so many ways to control people. There's only so many ways to get people conditioned to comply with things. There's a million variations on the theme of it, but the actual thing you're doing, there's only so many things, right? I mean, creating us versus them is a thing, right? Milieu control, like controlling the environment that a person is in so you can control them. There's a million ways to do that, but that category of behavior is a way that you unduly influence people. Loading the language is a way of doing that. There's a million words you can load, but the overall thing is loading language, right? So you get the idea. John O'Nolan, can't the orgs lease out rooms to outside parties like a drama school? I'm going to predict right now that you're going to start seeing stuff like that. I don't know how soon. I think it's already happened, actually, in a way. I think some Scientology, if I remember right, who did this? I think there was a church that did this. They were renting out part of their facility, part of their building. Oh, Kansas City did this for a while. They were renting out sections of their building to other businesses to help make their rent. This was years ago. I remember that. So yeah, absolutely. Orgs can do that. And I predict that orgs will be doing more of that in the future because they're basically just sales extension units of the Sea Org now. The Sea Org doesn't really care about orgs as orgs. They care about them as places the Sea Org can send regs to make money and extract wealth out of that area. That's kind of how Scientology thinks about orgs now. There will be a resurgence because of the golden age of admin trainees that are sort of Miscavige's big white hope right now, right? Is these trainees that are training to be executives, but this is just going to be another Band-Aid on top of 5 other Band-Aids that really is not doing anything to stop the hemorrhaging, right? The bleeding. So, okay, ASEX222, have you run out of backlog questions? I have. We are doing live because I don't have questions to answer in a queue. I have a few left over of stuff I never really got around to answering that I don't know the answer to, because I've never just gone into that stuff. Like somebody asked me, for example, about the Penthouse interview with L. Ron Hubbard Jr. I've never read it, and I've never really bothered to go down that rabbit hole totally, right? So I don't have an ability to answer a question about that. So I've never answered that one. But otherwise, yeah, pretty much. That's why I'm taking them live. But 1, 2, 3, how does Scientology make money? Really? Scientology makes money now mainly through straight donations. And by that, I mean donations that are not made with the idea that they're going to get anything back. Just take my money. Just take my money. Right? IAS memberships, ideal org contributions to build the orgs, right? To buy the building or renovate the building. There's no personal return on that, right? It's just, I'm giving money to the church, and maybe it's going to use this money for some good purpose, and I don't really know, but I'm just giving the money to the church because I believe in my heart of hearts that the Scientology will, and Miscavige will invest this money or use this money, for the common good. The other thing that Scientology does to make money, much less so now these days than they do from the straight donations, is the sale of books and lectures and L. Ron Hubbard classwork and auditing. So you can do the services of Scientology at the churches, and they make money doing that. Okay. All right, good. We're almost there, so we're gonna try to wrap these up here. Fred Duncan, do you know if Marty Rathbun is back in Scientology? I know that Marty Rathbun is back to speaking in favor of Scientology, and will make a video at the demand of Scientology at the drop of a hat. He will do that. So basically, yes. Now, is he personally back in Scientology doing Scientology? I doubt it. I very, very, very much doubt that. Yeah, I don't think so. But he is controlled by Scientology. Yeah, that much is for sure. All right. Oh, absolutely. Thank you for bringing this up. No Name in NW. Thank you for your recommendation of the book, The Body Keeps the Score by Vanderkolk. It shows clearly the damage caused by traumatic lives. Shows how inadequate Dianetics is. Comment for viewers. Yeah, absolutely. Let me say a few things. I won't shut up about that book. It's the book that Dianetics pretends to be. Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's all about trauma, and it explains trauma. And if you are familiar with Dianetics, you're going to be familiar with some of the stuff that van der Kolk talks about, because Hubbard took very real things, very real phenomena like triggering and trauma, and he reframed it into his own little system with engrams and locks and secondaries and these various, these things, the reactive mind and the analytical mind. And Hubbard dreamed up this whole mental anatomy that has no basis in reality, except for the fact that trauma is real and triggers are real. And he used those two things to build this entire mythology about the human mind. And he did that back in 1950. And he built on that mythology, and that's where Scientology comes from. The book, The Body Keeps the Score, was published in 2014, and it is a modern rendition or take on the sort of state of the subject when it comes to where social science thinks about trauma. That's van der Kolk's specialty. And he explains it quite well as far as I'm concerned, and definitely does a great job of explaining all the things that Hubbard explains, but van der Kolk explains it in real world terms, not the mythology of the reactive mind. You don't have to invent things like that in order to make this stuff make sense or deal with it. And how do you deal with trauma? Lots of different ways. But the fact of the matter is that regression therapy or reliving events in your past can be more damaging than it can be therapeutic. Depends on the person. And it's only a small percentage of people that actually respond at all favorably to, regressing or reliving traumatic episodes. It's not necessarily exposure therapy or reliving or regression therapy isn't always the way to go. But Hubbard insists that it's the only way to go and that every single person will uniformly positively respond to Dianetics treatment. And it's just not true. So there you go. That's one thing I can say about it. The other thing I can say is that, I just love saying this bit, and I think I just said it, so I'll say it real fast, which is this book, The Body Keeps the Score, is the book that Dianetics pretends to be. I think that really says it all, and I'll leave it at that. All right. Now, I am skipping a couple of questions that I'm just not particularly interested in answering right now. So if I did not answer your question, don't take it personally. I'm just kind of trying to wrap up here. Japan of Green Gables, do you think most people understand what the pre-clear levels are all about? I've wondered if that's why something like Nexium that basically repackaged them was able to be successful. That's an interesting question, Japan. I do not think that people in general understand Scientology. I think they understand that Scientology is abusive and that it is a cult and that people in Scientology believe weird things and that they do bad things and that a lot of the time those bad actions are caused by or informed by those bad beliefs. I think that's how people think about Scientology. I think that a few people out there, a lot of you guys, for example, are a lot more interested in the details of Scientology and the nuances of it, right? Which I'm happy to explain because I can tell you all about it. But the way that the lower grades, for example, work as different from how the OT levels work, most people couldn't give a crap about that, right? That's Scientology minutia. That's where you get into the details, which is fascinating, very, very interesting stuff, and I can explain it for hours, but it's generally not what people care about or take away from their brush with Scientology, right? And I don't know that I would want them to, actually, because Scientology is an incredibly complicated system of bells and whistles and levers and pulleys that just really have the product of messing with your head. And getting you to conform with Hubbard's wishes. So you don't really need to understand all that stuff at that level. But if you want to, we can certainly go there, right? I mean, I've explained it many times. The grades, for example, grades 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are your milestones or gateways to getting to the state of clear. You have to walk this path in order to get to the state of clear where you no longer have your reactive mind, right? And you got to deal with various problems and issues that you have in your life, such as communication issues, unsolvable problems that you feel you have, your wrongdoings and moral transgressions, your upsets and relationship difficulties with others, and a sort of interesting phenomena with people where they feel the need to be right and will actually disable themselves in order to be right. All of those things I just described are the grades. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You deal with all of those things, then you go clear, right? With Dianetics. That's how Scientology works. So that's what it's about. Could somebody like Keith Raniere take those concepts and mix them up for their own use? Of course they could. right? Yeah. Japan of Green Gables. Do you know if Hubbard read Alfred Adler? I've wondered if that's where the idea of survival in Scientology was lifted from. Here's the one place, the one thing I know that L. Ron Hubbard had to say about Alfred Adler is in the book Dianetics 55. So in 1955, Hubbard dictated this book, and he said, if Kant couldn't, he's talking about philosophers. He was putting down philosophers, right? And earlier practitioners, right? Or people in this field. And he said, if Kant couldn't, and if Adler addled communication, then maybe we, need to take a good hard look at it or something. Whatever the line was, that's how he referred to Adler, was that he addled communication. Does that mean Hubbard actually read any of Adler's work? Nope. No idea. I have no idea if he did, but that was his one reference to the man. Ace X222, what do you think about the Tenyaka Memorial and L. Ron Hubbard's gold hidden at sea? Okay, I've heard of this before, but let me look this up again real fast. This Tenyaka Memorial, alleged Japanese strategic planning document in which the Prime Minister laid out a strategy to take over the world for Emperor Hirohito. The authenticity of the document was long accepted, still quoted in Chinese textbooks. But historian John Dower states that most scholars now agree it was a masterful anti-Japanese hoax. Ah, okay. I have no real thoughts on that because I don't have any real expert opinion or knowledge of that, so I'm not going to comment on it beyond reading what I just read from Wikipedia. I think that's interesting. I think propaganda is an interesting tool, isn't it? How effective it can be. As far as L. Ron Hubbard hiding gold at sea, fuck that. No, I don't think so. I think L. Ron Hubbard engaged in a great deal of money laundering and investments in gold moving and stuff like that. I think he was a firm believer in gold bullion, right? Moving it around that way. He had courier missions set up to have people transport money around. I know all those things are true, but beyond that, I don't know what else to say. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Okay, last question here for today. Rebecca B. asks, how is the disparity of most public members knowing Scientology is a niche group and the constant hype of growth? How is the disparity? Well, I mean, this is probably the one valid entry point that most Scientologists share in terms of being able to create doubts or cognitive dissonance with them, is bringing this point up. You say you guys have the most powerful technology in the world. It's going to revolutionize, psychology, and it's going to revolutionize humanities, and you're going to save the world. You're going to save people. You got this, you got your hand on the tail of this lion, and and this thing is just so powerful, right? And yet, look at this parking lot. Look at these course rooms. Look at this place. It's empty. Nobody's here. Nobody cares. Nobody's part of this. What's up with that? Right? How does that work? And they'll tell you all the excuses and reasons, but this is a real problem for a lot of Scientologists, that it's not booming, that it's not expanding. Now more than ever, I'm sure. And the consequence of where this will go, if it's not already there, one thing we can predict about this is that the group of Scientologists will go from being upset about that or it's a point of disparity for them, to accepting it and then twisting it around as to why it needs to be that way. Well, the world doesn't deserve Scientology. We are the special ones, right? We'll show them. We'll get along without them, right? We'll get our 10,000 OTs and we'll clear this planet despite all these people, right? Not with them, but despite them. That would be the next sort of stage of thinking from the group's perspective about the world, once they give up on the idea that they're actually going to take over the world. But I don't think they've given up on that idea quite yet. Okay. All right. And there we go. So I have gone on and on and on at a mad rate here. So let's go ahead and wrap up the show for today. Actually went longer than I thought I would. I said I was tired. I'm really tired. Anyway, but there you go, guys. There's some questions for you. Once I get going, it's hard for me to stop. So there we go. That's what I got for you. All right. Thanks for coming around and listening to me blabber on at a mad rate about all this. I will say, if you like my show, you like my work, you think this is valuable or important, it would be awesome if you could financially contribute, support the show in some fashion. That'd be great. I have a Patreon, you can PayPal, whatever. There's links below. I am no longer on Twitter and my website is no longer in existence. So I decided that the website was kind of more bother than it was worth, actually. So that's why I purposefully took it down. If you go to my website, it says account suspended, but that's just Bluehost. That's just the screen they put up. I don't know why. I just dumping the website. So that's where that's at. And let's see here. Oh yeah, and like I said, I lost my phone for a few days. So if you're trying to text me or anything like that or call me, you won't be able to for a few days because I literally don't have my phone. Okay, so that all being said, thanks guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.